I'm going to squeeze every last dime out of that fool right now. Then we're going to Miami on her dime." Those words came out of my own daughter Jessica's mouth as she laughed with her husband, Christian, in the courthouse hallway. They thought I couldn't hear them. They thought I was too old and stupid to notice anything. But if they knew what was really about to happen in that courtroom, if they knew what I had been preparing for weeks, they would have shut their mouths forever. What I did next left them all speechless. Even the judge was stunned. But before I tell you how I turned the tables on those two traitors, let me ask you for a favor. Please like and subscribe to this channel, because this story is going to be so hot, you won't want to miss a second of it. Now, let's start from the beginning. My name is Carol. I'm 63 years old, and I thought I had seen it all in this life. I was wrong. I've been a widow for 6 years. My husband passed away from a sudden heart attack, and since then, I've lived alone in the house we shared for decades. I have one daughter, Jessica, who is now 32. She's been married to Christian for 7 years. I always thought she had found a good man, someone hardworking and responsible. How wrong I was. For years, I maintained a close relationship with my daughter. We saw each other every week, had lunch together, talked on the phone almost every day. Christian was always polite to me, though distant. He'd call me Mom with a smile that never seemed entirely sincere, but I chalked it up to his reserved personality. Everything changed 4 years ago when my parents passed away. First my mother, then my father 6 months later. The grief was immense, but along with that pain came something unexpected, an inheritance. My parents had worked their entire lives, saving every penny with discipline and sacrifice. They left me $280,000. It was a fortune to me. Enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my days, to not worry about medical expenses, to maybe travel a little and see those places I'd always dreamed of visiting. I deposited that money into a bank account in my name. Mine alone. No one else had access. I told Jessica about the inheritance because she was my daughter, because I thought she would be happy for me. And at first, she seemed happy. She hugged me, told me my parents would have wanted me to enjoy every dollar, that I deserved it after so many years working as a teacher. But something in her eyes changed. It was subtle, so subtle I almost didn't notice it. In the first few months after I received the money, Jessica started visiting more often. At first, I was thrilled. I thought she had finally understood how important it is to spend time with family. She came with Christian almost every weekend. They'd bring dessert, help me with the groceries, and stay for dinner. But there was something strange in the way Christian watched me. His eyes would scan the house as if he were taking inventory. He asked questions about my finances that made me uncomfortable. How much did I pay for utilities? Had I made any investments with the inheritance money? Where did I keep my important documents? Jessica changed too. She started suggesting I put the money into a joint account with her. For extra security, she'd say. So that if anything happened to you, I could help you right away. I politely refused. I told her I appreciated her concern, but I was comfortable managing my own finances. I had been a teacher for 30 years. I knew how to add and subtract perfectly. She didn't like my answer. I saw how she tightened her lips, how she exchanged a look with Christian, but she smiled and said she only wanted what was best for me. The visits continued, more and more frequent, more and more insistent. One Saturday afternoon, about 3 months ago, I was making coffee in the kitchen when I heard voices in the living room. Jessica and Christian were speaking in low tones, but the walls in my house are thin. I approached without making a sound. She's too stubborn. She's not going to just give us the money, Christian said with a tone I'd never heard from him before. A cold, calculating tone. Then we'll have to do it another way, Jessica replied. My own daughter, my own blood. We can say she's losing her mind, that she can't manage her affairs anymore. There are legal ways, they laughed. Both of them. As if they were planning a vacation and not the destruction of someone who loved them. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. The air became heavy and thick. But I didn't go into the living room. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood there, with the steaming coffee pot in my trembling hands, and something inside me hardened like steel. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the victim. I wasn't going to let them steal what my parents had built with so much effort. If they wanted to play dirty, I was going to teach them how the game was really played. But what I discovered next was far worse than I had imagined. I went back to the kitchen, the coffee pot still in my hands. I served Jessica and Christian their coffee as if I hadn't heard a thing. I smiled. I asked if they wanted more sugar. I talked about the weather and how beautiful the flowers in the garden were. They smiled back, relaxed, never suspecting they had just shown me their true colors. When they left that afternoon, I closed the door and stood in the hallway for several minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt something deeper than sadness. I felt a cold calm run through my body, like ice spreading through my veins. My own daughter wanted to rob me. My own flesh and blood was planning to declare me incompetent to get her hands on the money my parents had earned with their sweat and tears. But if they thought I was going to stand by while they stripped me of everything, they were dead wrong. The next day, I started to move. Silently. With precision. Like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. The first thing I did was review all my documents. Every paper, every folder, every corner of my desk. I pulled out the deed to the house, the bank statements, my will, my parents' death certificates. Everything was in order, filed away in the correct folders. But I kept searching because something told me there had to be more. And I found it. Behind my medical files, hidden between old x-rays and old prescriptions, there was a manila folder that I hadn't put there. I pulled it out with hands that were starting to shake. I opened it, and what I saw took my breath away. Legal documents, drafts of a lawsuit. My name appeared over and over again on those pages. Carol Hayes Thompson. Alleged mental incapacity to manage her assets. Progressive cognitive decline. Urgent need for a legal guardian. Every word was a stab. Every sentence was a carefully constructed lie. They had forged medical reports signed by a certain Dr. Evans, whom I had never met. They invented episodes of confusion that never happened. They described a senile woman who left the stove on, who forgot to take her medicine, who got lost on the way to the supermarket. None of it was true. My mind was perfectly clear. But they had created an entire story, a fake file designed to convince a judge that I was incapable of taking care of myself. And the designated guardian in those documents was Jessica, my daughter. My only daughter, the baby I carried for 9 months, whom I nursed, whom I cared for when she had a fever, whom I taught to read and write. That same person now wanted to lock me in a legal cage to empty my bank accounts. I took a deep breath. I took my cell phone and photographed every page of that cursed folder. Every document, every forged signature, every printed lie. I uploaded the photos to an email account I had created years ago that they didn't know about. Then I put everything back exactly as I had found it. They couldn't know I had discovered it. Not yet. The following days were an Oscar-worthy performance. Every time Jessica and Christian came to visit, I smiled like the perfect grandmother. I cooked their favorite dishes. I asked about their work. I served them hot tea in the porcelain cups that had belonged to my mother. And all the while, I watched every gesture, every look, every word they dropped like breadcrumbs marking a trail. Jessica began to change her behavior toward me. She became more attentive, but in a strange way. "Mom, I've noticed you've been a bit distracted lately," she'd say in front of my friend Sharon when she came to visit. "Mom, are you sure you turned off the stove? Mom, you forgot we were supposed to meet on Tuesday." All lies. I never forgot anything. But she was building witnesses, planting doubts in the minds of those around me, creating a public narrative that matched the fake documents she had hidden in my house. Christian played his part too. He would nod with a worried expression every time Jessica mentioned my supposed lapses. "Yes, Mom, maybe you should get a checkup, just to be sure. At our age, you have to take care of yourself." At our age, he was 35. I was 63. But he spoke as if we were contemporaries, as if I already had one foot in the grave. One afternoon, Christian suggested I move in with them. "You have this huge house, and you're all alone," he said in a syrupy voice. "We have space. We could take better care of you if you lived with us." I thanked them sweetly but rejected the offer. "I'm very comfortable here," I told them. "This house holds so many memories." I couldn't leave it. I saw frustration cross Jessica's face for a split second before she smiled again. A few days later, while Jessica was checking her phone in my living room, she received a message. The screen lit up, and from where I was washing dishes, I managed to read part of the text. It was from Christian. It said something about meeting with Martin on Thursday, about having the papers ready, about speeding things up before I did something unexpected. Thursday. That was the key day. That same afternoon I called Sharon, my friend, my confidant of 40 years. I told her everything in a voice that was trembling but firm. The fake documents, the lies, the plan to have me declared incompetent. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. "Carol," she finally said in a hard voice, "you need legal help, right now. I know someone, an excellent lawyer. Her name is Rachel." The next day, I met with Rachel in her downtown office. It was a tall building with large windows that let in the midday light. I went up in the elevator with a knot in my stomach. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if anyone could really help me, or if it was already too late. Rachel turned out to be a woman of about 45, slim, with short hair and rectangular glasses that gave her a stern but trustworthy air. She greeted me with a firm handshake and invited me to sit in a chair across from her desk. She didn't waste time on unnecessary pleasantries. "Sharon told me a bit about your situation," she said as she opened a new notebook, "but I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, with details. Don't leave anything out." And so I did. I told her about my parents' death, about the $280,000 inheritance, about how Jessica and Christian started acting strangely. I told her about the conversation I overheard in my living room, about the fake documents I found hidden, about the lies Jessica was spreading in front of witnesses. Rachel took notes without interrupting me. Her eyes moved quickly between my face and the paper. When I finished speaking, she put her pen down on the desk and looked at me directly. "What they're doing to you is a serious crime," she said in a clear, professional voice. "Forgery of official documents, attempted estate fraud, possibly conspiracy. If we can prove all of this, they won't just lose the case. They could face criminal charges." I felt a chill run down my spine. Criminal charges. My own daughter could go to jail. Part of me twisted in pain at the possibility. But another part, the part that had seen those fake documents with my name on them, the part that had heard their laughter as they planned to rob me, that part felt nothing but a thirst for justice. "What do we need to do?" I asked. Rachel leaned back in her chair and folded her hands on the desk. "We need more proof. The documents you photographed are excellent, but we need something more. We need to record them talking about their plans. We need them to incriminate themselves in their own words." She explained how the law worked in these cases. In our state, it was legal to record conversations as long as one of the parties involved gave their consent, and I was part of those conversations. So I could record every word Jessica and Christian said in my presence without their knowledge. Rachel took a small device from a drawer. It was a digital voice recorder, no bigger than a pack of cigarettes. She showed me how to turn it on, how to adjust the volume, how to download the files later. She also taught me how to use the recording app on my cell phone as a backup. "You have to act completely normal," she instructed me. "You can't let them suspect a thing. When they come to visit, record everything. Try to ask questions that lead them to talk about the money, about the legal plans, about what they plan to do with you, but do it naturally. If they notice anything strange, they'll clam up and we'll lose our chance." "Can you do it?" she asked, looking me straight in the eye. "Can you act in front of your daughter, knowing what you know?" I looked back at her without blinking. "I can," I replied, and I meant it completely. I left that office with the recorder hidden in my purse and a steely determination in my chest. If they wanted to play at destroying me, I was going to show them what a 63-year-old retired teacher could do when she was underestimated. The next few days were a test of emotional endurance like I had never experienced. Jessica came to visit me on Wednesday afternoon. She brought sweet rolls from the bakery I liked and hugged me as always. "Mom, I missed you," she said in that affectionate voice that now sounded so fake to me. "I missed you too, sweetie," I replied as the recorder in my pocket registered every word. We sat in the living room. I served them coffee. We talked about trivial things at first: the weather, a neighbor who had a baby, a sale she saw at the supermarket. But then, carefully, I steered the conversation where I needed it to go. "I've been thinking about your grandparents' money," I said, stirring the sugar in my cup. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm managing it properly. Maybe I should do something else with it." I saw Jessica's eyes light up. Her posture changed. She leaned forward with renewed interest. "Like what, Mom?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I don't know," I replied, shrugging. "Maybe invest it, or put it in an account that you two could manage if something happens to me. I'm getting older. Sometimes I worry I'll forget important things." Jessica could barely contain her excitement. "Mom, that's very sensible of you. In fact, Christian and I have been talking about exactly that. We think it would be good for us to have access to your accounts. Just for security. To help you if you need it." I nodded slowly as if I were considering it, but I'm not sure if that's necessary yet. Jessica's expression hardened just a little. "Mom, I don't want to scare you, but I've noticed you've been very forgetful lately. The other day you left the door unlocked, and you forgot we had plans to meet. Those things worry us." More lies. I had never left the door unlocked. I had never forgotten an appointment, but she kept building her narrative. "Maybe you're right," I said in a small, vulnerable voice. "Maybe I am losing my memory." Jessica took my hand. Her touch made me nauseous, but I didn't pull away. "Don't worry, Mom. That's what we're here for. To take care of you. In fact, I've already spoken to a lawyer about this. His name is Martin. He's very good. He can help us arrange everything legally so your assets are protected." "A lawyer?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Is that really necessary?" "It's for the best, Mom. Trust me. We're going to meet with him next week, just to sign some papers. Nothing complicated. Every word was recorded. Every lie, every manipulation, all registered on that tiny device in my pocket. When Jessica left that afternoon, I waited until her car disappeared down the street. Then I took out the recorder, plugged in my headphones, and listened to the entire conversation. It was all there. Her admission that they had spoken with a lawyer, her attempt to make me believe I was losing my memory, her plan to have me sign papers. I sent the file to Rachel that same night. 2 days later, Christian came alone. That was unusual. He usually arrived with Jessica, but that Friday afternoon he knocked on my door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mom, can I come in?" "Jessica's busy, but I wanted to stop by and say hello." "Of course," I said, stepping aside. The recorder was already on in the pocket of my green cardigan. Christian sat on the sofa and declined the coffee I offered. He got straight to the point in a way that took me by surprise. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Jessica and I are worried. We believe you need help managing your affairs. It's nothing to be ashamed of. At your age, it's normal to need support. At my age, as if 63 was synonymous with senility. I don't understand," I said, keeping my voice shaky. "What kind of help?" "Legal help. Financial help. Look, I'll be blunt. We have an appointment with the lawyer, Martin, next Tuesday. We're going to start a process to have Jessica become your legal guardian. It's for your own good." I felt my blood boil, but I maintained a confused and frightened expression. "Guardian? What does that mean?" "It means Jessica will be able to make decisions for you, handle your money, sign documents. You won't have to worry about a thing." "But I can manage my own things," I protested weakly. Christian sighed as if he were talking to a stubborn child. "Mom, with all due respect, you can't. We've seen how you forget things, how you get confused. Dr. Evans has already prepared a report on your mental state." "I don't know any Dr. Evans," I said. The truth slipped out before I could stop it. Christian's eyes narrowed for a second. Christian was silent for a moment after my comment about Dr. Evans. I saw his brain working quickly, searching for a response. He finally smiled, but the smile had no warmth. "Of course you know him, Mom. He was the doctor who treated you last year when you had that fall. Don't you remember? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Your memory isn't good." I had never had a fall, but he kept inventing. He kept weaving lies upon lies, and the recorder captured every one of them. "Maybe you're right," I murmured, lowering my head like a defeated old woman. "Maybe I do need help." "Exactly," Christian said, leaning back on the sofa with visible satisfaction. "Don't you worry about a thing. Jessica and I will take care of everything. In fact, after we have control of your accounts, we were thinking of taking a trip. Miami, probably. We could use a break." "You're going to use my money to travel?" I asked in a trembling voice. Christian realized his mistake too late. His expression changed. No, that's not it, Mom. I was just saying that after all this stress, we deserve a vacation. But the important thing first is taking care of you." I nodded slowly. "Of course. I understand." When Christian left, my hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the recorder. But it wasn't from fear, it was from contained rage, from disgust, from an indignation so deep it hurt my chest. This man, this stranger who had married my daughter, had just admitted to my face that he planned to rob me and spend my money on luxury vacations. That night, I sent the complete recording to Rachel. She replied within 20 minutes. Her message consisted of only 3 words. "We have everything." We met again in her office the next day, a Saturday morning. Rachel had listened to all the recordings I had sent her during the week. 6 in total, each one more incriminating than the last. "Carol, this is pure gold," she said, pointing to her computer where she had the audio files organized. "We have direct admissions of fraud, of forging medical documents, of conspiracy to seize your assets. With this, we can not only defend you, but we can counterattack." "What do you mean by counterattack?" I asked. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes shining. "I mean, we're not going to wait for them to file their lawsuit. We're going to get ahead of them. We're going to file a criminal complaint against them for fraud and attempted extortion. And when we do, we'll have so much evidence they won't be able to escape." I felt a tingle in my stomach, a mix of fear and excitement. "Are you sure that will work?" "I'm sure," Rachel answered firmly. "But I need you to answer something honestly. Are you prepared to see this through to the end? Because once we start the legal process, there's no going back. Your daughter will know you betrayed her. They will hate you. They will try to make you feel guilty." I looked her directly in the eye. "They betrayed me first. I'm just defending myself." Rachel nodded in approval. "Then we're going to do this right. But first, I need one more piece of evidence. The definitive one. I need you to get them to talk about the lawyer, Martin. About how much they're paying him. About Dr. Evans' fake documents. I need them to consciously admit that the whole thing is a setup." "How am I going to do that?" I asked, feeling a lump in my throat. "You're going to pretend to accept their plan. You're going to tell them you agree to sign the papers, that you want Jessica to be your guardian. And when they're relaxed, when they think they've already won, that's when they'll loosen their tongues. That's when they'll say the things that will truly seal their fate." I left that office with a clear plan, a risky plan, but a plan that, if it worked, would completely turn the tables on them. On Monday afternoon, I called Jessica. I kept my voice tired, defeated. "Honey, I need to talk to you. About what you and Christian told me. About the lawyer and the papers." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then Jessica's voice sounded cautious. "What's wrong, Mom? I think you're right. Maybe I do need help. I've been thinking a lot and I'm scared of forgetting something important. I'm scared of making a mistake with the money. If you two can help me, then I accept." I could hear the barely contained excitement in Jessica's voice when she replied. "Mom, that's a very mature decision. We're so proud of you. What do you say we come over for dinner tonight? We can talk about everything calmly." "That sounds perfect, honey." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The trap was set. Now I just had to keep up the act a little longer. That night, I prepared a special dinner. Roast chicken with vegetables, white rice, fresh salad. I set the table with the beige tablecloth I only used on important occasions. I lit candles. Everything had to look perfect. Everything had to seem like a celebration. Jessica and Christian arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. They brought a bottle of wine and huge smiles on their faces. They hugged me with an affection that turned my stomach. But I smiled. I acted. I served them dinner while the recorder worked silently in my apron pocket. During dinner, we talked about normal things at first. About Christian's job at the tech company where he was supposedly a manager. About a friend of Jessica's who had gotten engaged. About the weather. But I could feel the tension beneath the surface. their anticipation to talk about what really mattered. Finally, as I was serving dessert, I was the one who broke the ice. "So, about those papers you mentioned, when do I have to sign them?" Jessica's eyes gleamed. "Tuesday, Mom. We have an appointment with the lawyer, Martin, at 10 in the morning. It's a simple procedure. You just sign a few documents giving me power of attorney over your accounts and properties. And after that," I asked in a small voice, "what's going to happen?" Christian wiped his mouth with his napkin and spoke with that condescending tone I was now so familiar with. "After that, Mom, you don't have to worry about a thing. We'll manage your finances, we'll pay your bills, we'll make sure you have everything you need. But the money is still mine, right?" I asked, feigning confusion. Jessica and Christian exchanged a look. "Of course, Mom. Technically, it's still yours. But I'll be the one deciding how it's used. For your own good." I nodded slowly. "I see. And how much are you paying the lawyer, Martin, for helping us with this?" Christian tensed slightly. "Not much. $5,000. It's the standard price for this type of case. $5,000 of my money to pay a lawyer who was going to help them rob me." The irony was almost comical. "And that doctor, Dr. Evans," I continued with feigned innocence, "is he going to be at the meeting on Tuesday too?" Jessica shook her head quickly. "No, Mom. Dr. Evans just needed to prepare the medical report. He's already got it ready. It says you have early onset dementia and can't handle complex financial decisions." "But I never went to see Dr. Evans," I said softly, letting the truth hang in the air. There was an uncomfortable silence. Jessica coughed. "Yes, you did, Mom. Last year. Don't you remember? That's part of the problem." Christian quickly intervened. "Look, Mom, it doesn't matter if you remember the doctor or not. What's important is that he's a professional, and his report will help the judge make the right decision." "The judge?" I asked. "Is this going to court?" "It's just a formality," Jessica said, taking my hand. "The judge just has to approve the documents. But don't worry. Martin says his friend the judge will sign everything without a problem. It's a quick process." There it was, the admission of judicial corruption, of fake medical documents, of a complete conspiracy, all recorded, all documented. And after I signed the papers, I asked in the most vulnerable voice I could muster, "Are you two going to take good care of my money?" Christian smiled. That smile that now made me sick. Christian smiled as he leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed now. "Of course, we'll take good care of your money, Mom. In fact, we already have plans to invest a portion of it, and we'll use another part to improve our quality of life. After all, taking care of you is going to be a full-time job." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly, Mom. And we also want to enjoy life a little. We've been working so hard. We were thinking of using a part of it for that trip to Miami we mentioned. Maybe $30,000, just to rest and recharge. $30,000. Of my money. For their vacation." They said it so naturally, as if it were already theirs, as if I no longer existed. "That sounds nice, kids," I said in a weak voice. "You deserve it." Christian raised his wine glass. "Let's make a toast then, to family, to taking care of each other." Jessica raised her glass too, smiling broadly. "And to Mom, for finally making smart decisions." We clinked our glasses. The sound of crystal echoed in the dining room like a sentence. They drank, celebrating their anticipated victory. I drank, knowing they had just signed their own condemnation. When they left that night, they hugged me with more affection than they had shown in months. Jessica even had tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. I know this isn't easy, but it's for the best." "I know, sweetie," I replied, stroking her hair like I did when she was a little girl. "I know." I closed the door behind them and waited until the lights of their car disappeared into the darkness of the street. Then I took the recorder out of my pocket with hands that no longer trembled. I had them. I had made them confess everything. Every sordid detail of their plan was now recorded on that tiny device. I sat on the sofa and wept. Not from sadness, not from defeat. I cried from rage, from indignation, from the pain for the daughter I thought I had, who turned out to be a stranger. But I also cried with relief. because now I had the weapons to defend myself. The next morning, I met with Rachel at her office. I handed her the recorder, and she listened to the entire conversation without interruption. When she finished, she took off her glasses and cleaned them slowly. Her eyes had a gleam I've only seen in hunters when they've cornered their prey. "Carol, this is perfect. Admission of fraud. Admission of forging medical documents. Admission that the judge is bought. Admission that they plan to spend your money on vacations. They couldn't have dug themselves a deeper hole if they tried." "What do we do now?" I asked. Rachel opened a folder she had on her desk. "Now, we counterattack. But not in the way they expect. They think they're going to court on Tuesday with their fake documents and their corrupt judge. But we're going to get there first." She explained the plan with surgical precision. That very afternoon, we were going to file a criminal complaint against Jessica, Christian, and the lawyer Martin for attempted fraud, forgery of documents, conspiracy, and judicial bribery. Rachel had already contacted a prosecutor she knew, an honest man with no ties to Martin or the judge mentioned in the recordings. "But there's more," Rachel said with a small, calculating smile. "On Tuesday, when they arrive at the courthouse expecting to meet their judge friend, they're in for a surprise. Because we'll be there too, with the authorities, with the evidence, and we're going to arrest them right when they think they've won." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Arrest them? Right there in the courthouse?" Rachel nodded. "It will be humiliating for them. Public. Exactly what they deserve. But I need you to confirm one thing, Carol. Are you prepared to see your daughter in handcuffs? To see her cry and beg? Because that's what's going to happen. And if you have a change of heart at that moment and drop the charges, all of this will have been for nothing." I looked her straight in the eye. "I won't have a change of heart. She chose this. She decided to betray me. I'm just protecting what's mine." "Good," Rachel said, closing the folder. "Then let's get started." That afternoon, I signed the criminal complaint. Every word I wrote hurt, as if I were driving knives into my own heart. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because if I didn't do this, if I let Jessica and Christian get away with it, then I would have let them destroy me without a fight. The next 2 days were the strangest of my life. I went about my normal routine. I watered the plants. I watched my television shows. I went for walks in the park. But inside, a clock was ticking, counting down the hours until Tuesday. Jessica called me on Monday night. Her voice sounded excited and nervous. "Mom, are you ready for tomorrow? Do you need us to pick you up?" "No, sweetie," I replied calmly. "Rachel is going to take me." There was a pause. "Rachel? Who's Rachel?" "A friend," I lied softly. She offered me a ride and I accepted. "I'll see you there at 10. "Okay, Mom, get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a big day." "Yes, sweetie, a big day." I hung up the phone and poured myself some chamomile tea. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I felt no doubts. Only a cold, absolute determination. Tuesday dawned with a clear, bright sky. I woke up early, showered, and put on a gray dress that made me look serious and respectable. I put on a little makeup. I tied my hair back in a low bun. I wanted to look like what I was. A 63-year-old woman with her mind intact and her dignity in place. Rachel picked me up at 9:30. She was accompanied by a man she introduced as Prosecutor Thomas Mendoza. He was a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a serious but kind expression. He shook my hand respectfully. "Mrs. Hayes," he said in a grave voice, "I have reviewed all the evidence that your lawyer, Rachel, provided. I want you to know that what your daughter and son-in-law tried to do to you is a serious crime, and we will ensure they face the consequences." "Thank you," I replied simply. "That's all I ask for, justice." The drive to the courthouse was silent. I looked out the window, watching the familiar streets of my city pass by. I remembered walking those same streets with Jessica when she was little. I'd hold her hand on the way to school. I'd buy her ice cream from the corner store. I'd teach her to look both ways before crossing. How had that sweet little girl become the woman who planned to rob me? At what point did I lose my daughter? We arrived at the courthouse building at 9:45. It was an old stone structure with tall columns and wide steps. Rachel took my arm as we climbed. Prosecutor Mendoza walked on my other side. Behind us were two plainclothes police officers. We stopped in the main lobby. Rachel pointed down a hallway to the right. The hearing room is that way. The judge who was supposed to preside over their case is Judge Martinez, but he was temporarily reassigned this morning. The new judge is Judge Navarro, someone with no connection to Martin. And do Jessica and Christian know this? I asked. No, they think everything is going according to their plan. They are about to have the most brutal awakening of their lives. We walked down the hall and turned a corner, and there I saw them. Jessica and Christian were standing near the entrance to the hearing room. Christian was wearing a dark suit. Jessica wore a pale yellow dress and high heels. They looked elegant, confident, victorious. Standing next to them was a man I assumed was the lawyer, Martin. He was portly, in his 60s, with completely white hair and an expression of arrogance that instantly disgusted me. When Jessica saw me, her face lit up. "Mom, you're here. Come, we'll introduce you to our lawyer, Mr. Martin." I started walking toward them, but Rachel stopped me with a gentle touch on the arm. "Not yet," she whispered. "Wait." And then something they didn't expect happened. Prosecutor Mendoza stepped forward, walking with firm steps toward where Jessica, Christian, and Martin were standing. The two police officers followed him. Jessica frowned, confused, as she saw them approach. Jessica frowned in confusion as she saw the prosecutor and the two police officers approach. Christian took a step forward with a defensive expression. The lawyer, Martin, looked at them with irritation, as if they were annoying interruptions to his perfect day. "Can I help you with something?" Martin asked in a condescending tone. "We're waiting for a private hearing." Prosecutor Mendoza pulled out his identification and showed it with a firm motion. "Prosecutor Thomas Mendoza. And the three of you are under investigation for fraud, forgery of official documents, conspiracy to commit property crime, and attempted bribery of a public official." The color drained from Jessica's face. Christian froze with his mouth slightly open. Martin tried to maintain his composure, but I saw his hands clench into fists. "What are you talking about?" Jessica stammered, looking around for some explanation. "This is a mistake." "It's no mistake, miss," the prosecutor replied in a firm voice. "We have compelling evidence that the three of you planned to have Mrs. Carol Hayes declared incompetent, using falsified medical documents with the goal of seizing her assets. We also have evidence that the lawyer, Martin, attempted to bribe Judge Martinez to expedite the process." Martin stepped forward with a furious expression. "That is a very serious and completely baseless accusation. I demand to see this so-called evidence immediately." Rachel then stepped forward, holding a thick folder. "With pleasure, counselor. Right here we have audio recordings where your client, Jessica, and her husband, Christian, admit to forging medical reports from a supposed Dr. Evans, who, by the way, does not exist in any state medical registry. We also have them admitting they plan to use Mrs. Hayes' money for personal trips to Miami. And, of course, we have the conversation where they mention you assured them your friend, Judge Martinez, would approve everything without a problem." Martin's face went from the red of rage to the white of panic in a matter of seconds. "Mom," Jessica cried, turning to me with eyes suddenly full of tears. "Mom, please tell me this isn't true. You recorded us? You betrayed us?" I walked slowly toward her. Each step hurt, but I took them all. I stopped in front of my daughter and looked her directly in the eyes. "I didn't betray you, Jessica. You betrayed me first. You planned to rob me, to declare me crazy, to lock me in a legal cage while you spent the money my parents earned with their sweat and tears." I just defended myself. Tears streamed down Jessica's cheeks, but they no longer moved me. I had seen too much. I had heard too much. I knew those tears were just another performance. "Mom, we did it for your own good," Jessica sobbed. "You were losing your memory. You needed help." "I never lost my memory," I replied in a hard voice. "That was a lie you invented. A lie you repeated so many times you almost believed it yourselves. But I know exactly who I am, where I am, and what you did to me." Christian finally found his voice. "Mom, this is a misunderstanding. We just wanted to protect you." "Protect me by spending $30,000 of my money on a trip to Miami?" I interrupted, looking at him with contempt. Protect me by paying $5,000 to a corrupt lawyer to forge documents? Protect me by telling everyone I was senile and confused? That's not protection, Christian. That's theft. That's abuse. That's betrayal. Prosecutor Mendoza signaled to the officers. Gentlemen, proceed. The two officers moved in. One of them pulled out handcuffs. Jessica took a step back with a look of absolute horror. No, 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 this can't be happening. Jessica Solis, the officer said in a neutral voice, you are under arrest for attempted estate fraud and forgery of documents. You have the right to remain silent. Mom, Jessica screamed as the officer cuffed her. Mom, please, I'm your daughter. You can't do this to me. Something inside me broke seeing her in handcuffs, a small part that was still a mother, that still remembered the little girl I had raised. But that part wasn't enough to stop me, not after everything I had discovered. You chose this, I said in a voice that barely trembled. You decided to see me as an obstacle instead of your mother. You decided my money was more important than my dignity. Now face the consequences of your choices. The other officer cuffed Christian, who offered no resistance. His face was gray, his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire life crumble in a matter of minutes. Martin tried to back away, but the prosecutor stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. You're coming with us too, counselor. We have sufficient evidence that you knew the medical documents were false, and yet you submitted them as legitimate. That's forgery and malpractice. This is an outrage, Martin growled. I'm going to sue everyone involved. I'm going to. You can sue whomever you like from jail. The prosecutor cut him off dryly. Now be quiet and walk. The officers began to lead the three of them toward the exit. Jessica struggled, twisting her head back toward me again and again. Mom, please. Mom, forgive me. Mom, I love you. Please don't do this. Every word was a stab. Every plea was a reminder of what we once had and what she had destroyed. But I didn't move. I didn't run after her. I didn't drop the charges. I stood there in that courthouse hallway, watching them take her away. Christian said nothing. He just walked with his head down, a defeated man. Martin cursed under his breath, threatening lawsuits and lawyers that we all knew would go nowhere. And then they were gone. The hallway fell silent. Rachel came over and placed a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I don't know, I answered honestly. I don't think I'll be okay for a long time. But I did the right thing. You did the right thing, Rachel confirmed. And now comes the hard part. The trial, the media, the family who will take sides. Are you ready for that? I looked toward where Jessica and Christian had disappeared. Ready or not, I don't have a choice. This has already started, and I'm going to finish it. Prosecutor Mendoza approached us as well. Mrs. Hayes, I want you to know you did a very brave thing. Many mothers in your situation would have chosen to stay silent, to let themselves be robbed rather than report their own children. You chose justice over silence. That deserves respect. I don't feel brave, I admitted. I feel shattered. The brave ones rarely feel brave, the prosecutor said with a sad smile. But they are, all the same. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright morning light. The sun blinded me for a moment, and I had to shield my eyes. When my vision adjusted, I saw a small group of reporters approaching. They had heard about the arrests. They wanted the story. Rachel held them off with a gesture. No comment for now. We'll issue an official statement later. But one of the reporters shouted a question. Ma'am, is it true you reported your own daughter for trying to steal your inheritance? I stopped. Rachel squeezed my arm as if to say, don't answer. But I needed to say something. I turned to the reporters and spoke in a clear voice. It is true that I filed charges against people who attempted to defraud me using false documents and legal manipulation. The fact that one of those people is my daughter makes this more painful, but no less necessary. No one, not even family, has the right to steal another person's dignity and assets. The reporters started shouting more questions, but Rachel guided me to her car. We got in quickly, and she drove off before they could surround us. That's going to be all over the news, Rachel said as she drove. I know, I replied, looking out the window. Let it be. Let everyone know what they tried to do to me. Maybe then other people in my situation will find the courage to defend themselves too. Rachel glanced at me with something that looked like admiration. You're stronger than I thought, Carol. I don't feel strong, I repeated. I feel broken. But broken doesn't mean defeated. We arrived at my house half an hour later. Rachel walked me to the door. Are you going to be okay alone? I'll be fine, I lied. I need to process all of this. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. Anytime, Rachel said before she left. I went into my house and closed the door behind me. The silence was absolute, heavy. I walked to the living room and sat on the same sofa where Jessica and Christian had sat just days ago, planning my destruction. I looked at the photographs on the mantel. Jessica, as a baby. Jessica at her graduation. Jessica on her wedding day with Christian. All these images of a life I thought I knew, which turned out to be a lie. I picked up their wedding photo and studied it for a long moment. They looked so happy, so full of hope. When had everything changed? When had love turned to greed? I put the photograph away in a drawer. I couldn't look at it anymore. Not yet. Maybe never again. The following days were a storm. The story was on every local newscast. 63-year-old mother reports daughter for attempted fraud. The headlines were sensational and painful. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Cousins I hadn't seen in years called with curiosity disguised as concern. Neighbors knocked on my door with excuses to gossip. Everyone wanted the sordid details of how my family had fallen apart. Only Sharon stood by my side without judgment. She came every afternoon with food I barely touched and sat with me in silence. She didn't ask uncomfortable questions. She didn't tell me I should forgive Jessica, because she was my daughter. She was simply there. One afternoon, as we were having tea in the kitchen, I finally asked her what had been eating at me. Do you think I'm a bad mother? Sharon put her cup down on the table and looked at me with those wise eyes that had seen as many years as mine. I think you're a mother who refused to be a victim. And that doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. But she's my daughter, I whispered, feeling tears burn in my eyes. I brought her into this world. I raised her. I taught her values. Where did I go wrong? You didn't go wrong anywhere, Carol. Jessica is an adult who made adult decisions. Bad decisions. She chose greed over love. That's not your fault. That's her responsibility. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But the guilt was like a wild animal in my chest, clawing to get out. A week after the arrest, Rachel called me for a meeting at her office. When I arrived, I found that Prosecutor Mendoza was there as well. Both had serious expressions. Carol, Rachel began, we need to talk about what comes next. Jessica and Christian have a defense attorney. They're trying to negotiate a plea deal. What kind of deal? I asked, feeling my stomach tighten. Prosecutor Mendoza cleared his throat. They want to plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for avoiding a trial. They're offering to return the money they've already spent, pay a fine, and perform community service. No jail time. No jail time, I repeated, feeling indignation rise in my throat. They tried to steal everything I have. They forged medical documents. They tried to have me declared incompetent. And they want to walk away with no real consequences? Rachel held up a hand. We haven't agreed to anything yet. The final decision is yours, Carol, but the prosecutor and I wanted to explain the options. If we reject the deal and go to trial, we have an excellent chance of winning. The evidence is overwhelming, but a trial means months of proceedings. It means Jessica and Christian will fight back. They will try to destroy your reputation. They will say you're a vengeful mother, that you're unwell, that you misunderstood them. It will be brutal. And if I accept the deal, I asked, what happens? They plead guilty to misdemeanors. They pay financial restitution, maybe around $30,000 in fines and compensation. They do community service for a year. They end up with criminal records. But they don't go to prison, and the case is closed in a matter of weeks instead of months. Prosecutor Mendoza added his perspective. Personally, I believe they deserve prison time for what they tried to do. But I also understand that you have suffered enough. Sometimes justice isn't perfect. It's just the best we can get under the circumstances. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to see them in prison. I wanted them to feel even a fraction of the pain I had felt. But another part of me was exhausted, tired of fighting. tired of crying, tired of seeing my daughter on the news in that orange jumpsuit. How long do I have to decide? I asked, opening my eyes. 3 days, Rachel replied. After that, the offer expires and we go to trial. I need to think about it, I said, standing up. I'll give you an answer before the deadline. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for hours, thinking about Jessica, about the girl she had been, about the woman she had become. Did she deserve a second chance? Or was I being weak for even considering the deal? At 3 in the morning, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway. On the other end, I heard choked sobs. Then Jessica's voice, broken and small. Mom, please, I need to talk to you. Jessica, you shouldn't be calling me, I said, feeling my heart race. Your lawyer said we shouldn't have contact. I know, Mom, but I can't take it anymore. I'm destroyed. I've lost my job. Christian blames me. The whole family has turned their back on me. And the worst part is, I know I deserve it. There was a long silence, just her sobs and my breathing. Mom, Jessica continued, her voice trembling, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know something. I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you like this. Everything just got out of control. Got out of control? I repeated, feeling the anger boil up again. Jessica, you two planned this for months. You forged documents. You lied to my face. You laughed while you talked about robbing me. None of that was an accident. You're right, she admitted, crying harder. You're absolutely right. I was a damn selfish person. I was greedy. I was cruel. And now I've lost everything, including you. Don't tell me that now that you're in trouble, I said harshly. Don't tell me you're sorry just because you got caught. No, Mom. I'm sorry because it's true. I've had a whole week in a cell to think about what I did, to see clearly what a monster I was. And I swear to you, on whatever you hold sacred, that if I could turn back time, if I could undo everything, I would. But I can't. I can only ask for your forgiveness, knowing I don't deserve it. I closed my eyes, feeling the tears run down my cheeks. What do you want, Jessica? Do you want me to drop the charges? Do you want me to save you like I always have? No, she replied, surprising me. I don't want you to drop anything. I deserve to pay for what I did. I just wanted to hear your voice one more time. I just wanted to tell you I was sorry before it was too late. Before you hate me so much you can't even hear my name. I don't know if I hate you or if I love you anymore, Jessica, I admitted with brutal honesty. I think I feel both at the same time, and it's tearing me apart. I know, Mom, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I did this to you. I'm sorry I was so blind. I'm sorry for everything. She hung up before I could reply. I sat on my bed in the darkness, the phone still in my hand, tears soaking my nightgown. The next morning, I called Rachel. I accept the deal, I said without preamble, on one condition. I want Jessica and Christian to publicly admit what they did. I want a written statement where they acknowledge every lie, every forgery, every attempt at fraud. I want the world to know the truth from their own mouths. Rachel paused. I can ask for it. But it's unusual. I don't care if it's unusual. It's what I need to close this. They either admit the truth or we go to trial. 2 days later, Rachel called me again. They've accepted your terms. They're going to sign a full confession. It will be made public. The deal includes $35,000 in restitution, 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service each, and, of course, the criminal records. Martin, for his part, will lose his license to practice law and will serve 6 months in prison for forgery. Good, I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. When is the deal signed? Next week. At the courthouse. You don't have to be there if you don't want to. I want to be there, I replied firmly. I want to see them sign their confession. I want to close this chapter looking them in the eye. The day of the agreement arrived, overcast and cold. I wore the same gray dress I had worn on the day of the arrests. Rachel picked me up, and we went to the courthouse together. The courtroom was small and austere. Cream-colored walls, dark wooden benches, a long table where the lawyers and judge would sit. I arrived early with Rachel. We sat in the front row on the right side. My hands were trembling slightly, so I kept them clasped in my lap. At 10 o'clock, the doors opened, and Jessica and Christian entered, accompanied by their defense attorney, a nervous-looking young man named Javier. Jessica looked haggard. She had lost weight. She had deep dark circles under her eyes, and her hair, which she always kept perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore a dark gray suit that was too big for her. Christian didn't look any better. His skin had a sickly pallor, and he walked hunched over as if carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. When Jessica saw me, her eyes instantly filled with tears. She tried to hold my gaze but couldn't. She looked down at the floor and bit her lower lip. Christian didn't even look at me. He kept his head down the entire time. They sat on the left side of the room, as far away from me as possible. Prosecutor Mendoza entered moments later with his briefcase and sat next to Rachel. He greeted me with a respectful nod. Finally, Judge Navarro entered, a man of about 60 with completely white hair and a serious but not unkind expression. We all rose until he took his seat behind the bench. We are here to formalize a plea agreement in the case of the state versus Jessica Solis and Christian Maldonado, the judge announced in a grave voice. Are all parties present? The lawyers confirmed. The judge reviewed some documents in front of him and then looked toward Jessica and Christian. Miss Solis, Mr. Maldonado, do you understand the terms of the agreement you are about to sign? Yes, Your Honor, they both replied in barely audible voices. Do you understand that by signing this document, you are admitting your guilt in the crimes of attempted estate fraud, forgery of documents, and conspiracy? Yes, Your Honor, they repeated. The judge paused and observed them harshly. I want you to understand the gravity of what you did. You attempted to take advantage of a 63-year-old woman, your own mother and mother-in-law, through lies and false documents. You wanted to have her declared incompetent to steal her assets. That is not just a legal crime. It is an unforgivable moral betrayal. Jessica began to cry openly. Christian remained with his head down, not reacting. The agreement you are signing today spares you from prison, the judge continued. Personally, I believe you deserve time behind bars. But the victim, Mrs. Carol Hayes, has decided to accept this agreement, and I will respect her decision. However, I want you to know that if you violate any term of this agreement, if you do not pay the full restitution, if you do not complete your community service hours, you will be back before me, and I will not be so lenient the second time. We understand, Your Honor, Javier, the lawyer, said quickly. I wasn't asking you, the judge cut him off dryly. I was asking them. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Jessica and Christian said in unison. Very well. Proceed to sign the documents. The court clerk brought several papers to the table where Jessica and Christian were. Among them was the full confession I had demanded. Javier briefly explained each document before they signed. I watched as Jessica took the pen with a trembling hand. She read the confession, tears falling onto the paper. Then she signed. Her signature looked jagged. Nothing like the elegant script I remembered from her birthday cards. Christian signed next without reading anything. He just scrawled his name on each indicated line with mechanical movements. When they finished, the clerk collected the documents and handed them to Judge Navarro. He reviewed them carefully, signed in several places, and then banged his gavel on the bench. It is so ordered. Jessica Solis and Christian Maldonado plead guilty to the charges presented. They shall pay $35,000 in restitution to Mrs. Carol Hayes within a period not to exceed 6 months. They will each complete 500 hours of community service over the course of 2 years. They will remain on probation during that period. Any violation will result in the revocation of this agreement, and they will face full sentencing. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck again. The judge rose and left the room. It was all over in less than 30 minutes. I remained seated, motionless, as Prosecutor Mendoza and Rachel gathered their things. Jessica slowly stood up and walked toward me. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she ignored him. She stopped a few feet away, tears streaming freely down her face. Mom, she whispered, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but someday, maybe in many years, do you think you could forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment. I saw the girl she had been. I saw the woman she had become. I saw the pain and regret in her eyes. But I also saw the betrayal. I saw the lies. I saw all the damage she had caused me. "I don't know, Jessica," I answered honestly. "Today, I can't forgive you. Maybe not tomorrow either. Maybe never. Or maybe, with time, the pain will lessen and I can find room for forgiveness. But that day is not today. Today, I just want you to leave and to comply with what you signed." Jessica nodded, sobbing. "I understand. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." She turned and walked to where Christian was waiting with his lawyer. Christian finally looked at me. There were no tears in his eyes, just a vacant, defeated expression. He said nothing. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply watched me for a second before leaving the room behind Jessica. Rachel touched my shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" "No," I replied, standing up. "But I'm going to be, someday." We left the courthouse into the bright midday Sunday. There were a few reporters waiting outside, but fewer than before. The story wasn't as new anymore. It wasn't as sensational. Rachel avoided them, guiding me to her car through a side exit. On the way back to my house, Rachel broke the silence. "You did the right thing, Carol. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did." "What is the right thing supposed to feel like?" I asked, looking out the window. "Because I just feel empty." "The right thing rarely feels good at first. It hurts. It disappoints. It makes you question everything. But in time, when you look back, you'll be proud that you stood up for yourself. You'll be proud that you didn't let them walk all over you." "I hope you're right," I said, without conviction. We arrived at my house, and Rachel walked me to the door as she always did. Before leaving, she handed me a large envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "A copy of the signed confession. Just in case you ever doubt you did the right thing. In case anyone ever tries to tell you that you overreacted or were cruel, read those words. Remember what they tried to do to you, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty for defending yourself." "Thank you, Rachel. For everything." She smiled. "That's what us fighting lawyers are for. Take care, Carol, and call me if you need anything." I went into my house and closed the door. The silence greeted me as always. I walked to the kitchen and put the kettle on. While I waited for the water to boil, I opened the envelope and took out the documents. The confession was 3 pages long. Each paragraph detailed the lies they had constructed. They admitted to forging Dr. Evans's reports. They admitted to planning to have me declared incompetent to access my money. They admitted that the entire thing had been a conspiracy motivated by greed. At the bottom of the 3rd page were their signatures. Jessica Solis, Christian Maldonado. I read every word twice. Then I put the documents in a drawer in my desk. Maybe Rachel was right. Maybe someday I would need to remember why I had done what I did. The water began to boil. I made my tea and sat in the living room with the warm cup in my hands. I looked around my house. Everything was the same furniture, the same photographs on the walls, the same clock ticking on the mantel. But something fundamental had changed. I had changed. I was no longer the naive woman who blindly trusted her family. I was no longer the mother who would have sacrificed everything for her daughter, no matter the consequences. Now, I was someone different, someone stronger, someone more careful, someone who knew that love wasn't always enough to protect you from betrayal. I didn't know if that was good or bad. I only knew it was real. The following months were a slow and painful healing process. Like when you break a bone and have to wait patiently while the body does its work of rebuilding. Some days I felt strong, capable of facing the world. Other days, I couldn't even get out of bed. Sharon continued to visit religiously every afternoon. Sometimes we talked about trivial things like the weather or the news. Other times we just sat in silence, sharing the space. Her constant presence was the anchor that kept me afloat when the waves of sadness threatened to pull me under. Jessica and Christian's confession was made public as part of the agreement. It appeared in several local papers. The comments online were brutal. Some supported me, calling me brave. Others criticized me for reporting my own daughter. I learned not to read the comments. I learned that the opinions of strangers held no power over my truth. 3 months after the court date, I received the first restitution payment, $10,000 deposited into my bank account. Rachel called to confirm it. The money's there, Carol. They're complying with the agreement. I looked at the balance in my account and didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. The money was back, but it couldn't buy what I had truly lost. It couldn't give me back my relationship with my daughter. It couldn't erase the lies or the betrayal. It was just money, cold and empty. One day, while grocery shopping at the market, I ran into a former coworker. Her name was Mariella, and we had taught together for years before we both retired. She hugged me with genuine affection. Carol, I heard everything that happened. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been. It's still difficult, I admitted, as we walked among the fruit stands. Some days I wonder if I made the right decision. If I should have been more compassionate. Mariella stopped and looked at me directly. Compassionate? Carol, being compassionate doesn't mean letting them destroy you. It means having healthy boundaries. It means loving yourself enough not to allow abuse. You did what any person with dignity would have done. Her words stayed with me for days. Maybe she was right. Maybe compassion didn't mean being a doormat. Maybe it meant honoring my own worth as much as anyone else's. In the 4th month, I started doing something I hadn't done in decades. I started to write. I bought a green hardcover notebook and a black ink pen. Every morning, I would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and write whatever I felt: the rage, the sadness, the confusion, the regret, the hope. It all came out onto those pages, without filter or judgment. Writing became my therapy. The words I couldn't say out loud, I put on paper, and something strange happened. By taking them out of my head and putting them outside of me, they lost some of their power over me. They still hurt, but they no longer drowned me. One afternoon while I was writing, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Sharon was coming later. I opened it cautiously and came face to face with a young woman I didn't know. She was about 25, with long brown hair and nervous eyes. "Mrs. Hayes?" she asked timidly. "Yes," I replied, not opening the door all the way. "Can I help you?" "My name is Sophia. I'm a reporter for the local paper. I've been following your story, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to give an interview. Not for sensationalism," she added quickly, seeing my expression, "but to talk about financial abuse of the elderly. It's a much more common problem than people think, and your story could help others." "I'm not interested," I replied, starting to close the door. "Please," Sophia said, gently placing a hand on the door. "Just 5 minutes. You can say no afterward, but let me explain why I think this is important." Something in her sincere gaze made me pause. I sighed and opened the door. 5 minutes. I let her in, and we sat in the living room. Sophia took out a small notepad, but not a recorder. I appreciated that gesture of respect. She started with general questions about how I was feeling now, months after the trial. Then she explained her idea. "Mrs. Hayes, every year thousands of seniors are victims of financial abuse by their own families. Many never report it because they feel ashamed or because they love their abusers too much. Your case is different. You fought back. And I believe your story could inspire others to do the same." "I don't feel like an inspiration," I said honestly. "I feel like a mother who lost her daughter." "But you didn't lose your dignity," Sophia replied. "You didn't lose your right to be treated with respect. And that matters. Especially for other people in your situation who think they have to endure the abuse because it's family." Her words touched something deep within me. I thought of all the sleepless nights I had spent wondering if I had been too harsh, if I had overreacted, if I should have just forgiven and forgotten. But I had never considered what message I was sending by defending myself. I never thought my story could help someone else. "What do you need from me?" I finally asked. "Just your voice, your words, your truth, unedited and unsoftened, just as it is." I agreed to the full interview. We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything from the beginning: the inheritance, the fake documents, the recordings, the trial, the pain of seeing my daughter in handcuffs, the constant struggle between love and justice. Sophia published the article 3 weeks later. The headline read, "When love isn't enough, dignity must be." I read it sitting in my kitchen with trembling hands. She had captured my story with respect and honesty. She didn't paint me as a hero or a victim, just as a woman who had made a difficult choice and was living with the consequences. The article went viral. I started receiving letters from all over the country. Seniors who had gone through similar situations. Sons who hated me for reporting Jessica. Daughters who thanked me for showing them they could stand up to abusive parents. The mail was overwhelming. I read every letter, though some made me cry. One letter in particular struck me deeply. It was from a 70-year-old woman named Elena. She wrote that her son had been stealing money from her for years, and she never had the courage to report him. But after reading my story, she finally went to the police. She ended the letter by saying, "You taught me that loving yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be." I saved that letter in the same drawer where I kept Jessica's confession. 2 documents, 2 opposing truths. One reminded me of the pain, the other reminded me of the purpose. On the 6th month, while walking in the park near my house, I saw someone sitting on a distant bench. Something about her posture was familiar. I approached slowly, and my heart stopped. It was Jessica. She looked different, thinner still than at the courthouse. Her hair was shorter, simple clothes, but it was her. When she saw me, she stood up immediately with a look of panic. "Mom, I didn't know you came to this park. I can leave." "No," I said, surprising myself. "You can stay. It's a public park." We stood several feet apart, looking at each other like 2 strangers. The silence was thick and heavy. "How have you been?" Jessica finally asked in a small voice. "Surviving," I replied. "And you?" "Same. I finished my community service hours last month. I'm working at a coffee shop. Christian and I divorced." That last part surprised me, though it shouldn't have. "I'm sorry." Jessica shook her head. "Don't be. It was for the best." He never accepted his responsibility. He always blamed me. Said the whole thing was my idea. In the end, I couldn't even look at him. She sat back down on the bench and I, after a moment's hesitation, sat down too. I left a considerable space between us. "Mom," Jessica said, looking at her hands, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but do you ever think we could?" Her voice broke. "I don't know, Jessica," I answered honestly. "It still hurts. I still have nightmares where I'm reading those fake documents with my name on them. I can still hear you laughing when you were planning to go to Miami with my money. That doesn't just go away. I know. I understand. But," I continued slowly, "I'm working on it. I'm writing. I'm healing. And maybe someday I can look at you without feeling all this pain." Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes.